blooming in two worlds. The East Garden Pavilion stood apart from the main palace, a secluded sanctuary where generations of imperial heirs had sought respite from court pressures. Unlike the formal geometric gardens that surrounded the palace, this space had been designed to mimic natural landscapes, a small stream winding beneath stone bridges, flowering trees creating dappled shade, wild grasses allowed to grow in seemingly untamed abundance. Leora waited within the pavilion, her exochair positioned beside a simple wooden bench. She had traded her elaborate imperial robes for a simpler blue gown that resembled what she had worn to Heartroot Farm. Even her hair, usually adorned with the jeweled pins of her station, fell loose around her shoulders. When Dain appeared at the garden entrance, guided by Tella, Leora's breath caught. He looked travel-worn but resolute, his tall frame somehow more imposing amid the refined surroundings of the imperial grounds. In his hand, he carried something wrapped carefully in damp cloths. Tella discreetly withdrew, leaving them alone in the pavilion. "You're the Empress," Dain said without preamble, his voice holding neither accusation nor awe, simply the calm statement of a truth discovered. Leora nodded, not trusting herself to speak immediately. The moment stretched between them, filled with unasked questions. "Why did you come?" she finally asked. "To understand," he replied, stepping closer. "To see if the woman I met was real or just a role you played." "Both," Leora admitted. "I am the Empress, but when I was with you, I was also just Leora, more myself than I've been allowed to be in years." Dain sat on the bench beside her chair, bringing them to eye level. "You could have told me. Would it have changed how you saw me?" "How you treated me?" He considered this honestly. "Yes, it would have had to." "That's why I didn't tell you," she smiled sadly. "For 2 days I wasn't a symbol or a ruler. I was just a woman you were kind enough to show your world to." "And now?" he asked quietly. Before Leora could answer, voices approached from the main path. She recognized one immediately, Lord Vexus, whose ambitions she had thwarted repeatedly over the years. "I simply thought her radiance would want to be informed immediately," Vexus was saying loudly to his companion. "A commoner infiltrating the palace grounds, claiming familiarity with the imperial person. It smacks of conspiracy." Leora's eyes narrowed. "Vexus," she murmured. "He's been waiting for an opportunity like this." "An opportunity for what?" Dain asked, tensing at her tone. "To undermine me, to suggest I'm unfit to rule because of my condition, and now because of my—" She hesitated. "My personal choices." Dain's expression hardened. "Your condition doesn't make you less, and your interest in how people actually live isn't weakness. It's the kind of leadership people pray for." The voices grew closer. In moments, Vexus would reach the pavilion and find exactly what he hoped for, evidence of the Empress's inappropriate association with a commoner. Leora made a swift decision. Her hand found the neural interface panel on her exochair, activating its communication system. "Tella, Code Phoenix. East Garden now." She turned to Dain, speaking rapidly. "I won't hide you or what you mean to me, but you need to understand what you're walking into. Imperial politics is more dangerous than any drought or blight." "I'm not afraid," he said simply. "You should be." Despite her words, Leora felt something unfamiliar warming her chest, something like hope. "But I'm glad you're not." When Lord Vexus rounded the corner with 2 council members in tow, he found not the scandalous scene he anticipated, but the Empress seated regally in her exochair, conducting an official agricultural consultation with the renowned botanical innovator Dain of Heartroot Farm. Tella stood nearby with a recording crystal, documenting the meeting for the Imperial Archives, while 2 additional council members nodded approvingly at the farmer's detailed explanation of drought-resistant farming techniques. "Lord Vexus," the Empress acknowledged coolly. "How fortunate you've arrived. Master Dain was just explaining how his methods could revolutionize production in your province's struggling southern territories." Vexus faltered, his planned accusations dying on his lips. "Your Radiance. I merely heard there was an unscheduled visitor and grew concerned for security." Your concern is noted, Leora replied, her voice carrying the frost of imperial authority. Though perhaps your energies would be better directed toward implementing these agricultural innovations rather than monitoring my appointment schedule. The council members with Vexus shifted uncomfortably, suddenly eager to distance themselves from what was clearly a failed political maneuver. Of course, your radiance, Vexus managed, bowing stiffly before retreating. When they had gone, the additional council members, summoned by Tella's quick thinking, also excused themselves, leaving Dain and Leora alone once more. That, Dain said with a slight smile, was impressive. Imperial politics, Leora shrugged. I've had years of practice. She nodded toward the cloth-wrapped object he still held. You brought something? Dain carefully unwrapped the damp cloths, revealing a plant unlike any Leora had seen before. Its stem glowed with a soft inner light, and its petals shifted between emerald and sapphire with each subtle movement of air. I created it, he explained. A hybrid of the flame orchid and the dew pearl. I've been working on it for years, but it finally bloomed the night after you left. He placed it gently in her hands. It needs both sun and shadow to thrive. Too much of either will kill it. Leora understood the metaphor immediately. Like an empress who needs both her duty and her humanity. I haven't named it yet, he said. I thought perhaps you might. Looking at the luminous bloom, Leora felt tears threatening. Such a small gift, yet it represented everything she had begun to believe impossible. Connection, understanding, a bridge between worlds. We could call it the balance bloom, she suggested softly, for what it needs to survive. Diane's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining just as they had on his porch that evening that now seemed so long ago. I didn't come here expecting anything, he said. I just needed to know if what I felt was real. And now that you're here? Leora asked, vulnerability creeping into her imperial composure. Now I know it was real. His thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. But I also know you have responsibilities I can't begin to imagine. Your place is here leading your people, and yours is at Heartroot Farm, creating wonders that could save thousands. Leora's heart felt heavy with the truth of their different worlds. A moment of silence passed between them, the impossibility of their situation hanging in the air. Then suddenly, Dane's expression shifted. Unless, he began. Unless what? Leora prompted when he hesitated. Unless there's a third option. His green eyes lit with the same innovation that had created his revolutionary farming methods. The Imperial Agricultural Academy has been without a director for years, according to your officials. What if someone with practical experience took that position? Someone who could implement new methods across the Empire while training others? Leora's mind raced, following his thought to its logical conclusion. Someone who would have reasons to consult regularly with the Empress on matters of imperial policy. Exactly. Dane smiled. I wouldn't be giving up my work, I'd be expanding it. And you wouldn't be abandoning your duties for personal happiness. You'd be willing to leave your farm, your home? I'd maintain Heartroot as a research station, he said. But home isn't always a place, Leora. Sometimes it's a purpose. Sometimes it's a person. The words touched something deep within her, a longing she had suppressed for years beneath the weight of imperial responsibility. Perhaps duty and personal fulfillment weren't mutually exclusive after all. The court will talk, she warned. No matter how we frame it professionally, they'll speculate about us. Let them talk, Dane replied with the straightforward confidence that had first drawn her to him. As long as we serve the Empire well, our personal lives are our own. 3 months later, the first crops planted using Dane's methods began to flourish in the drought-stricken eastern provinces. Lord Vexus found himself outmaneuvered when the success made him look foolish for opposing the agricultural reforms. The imperial court still whispered about the unusual relationship between the Empress and the agricultural director, but even the most critical voices couldn't deny the results of their collaboration. And if the Empress's exo-chair was occasionally seen in the Academy gardens late in the evening, or if the agricultural director sometimes attended private imperial dinners, the people who truly mattered understood. Some plants need both sun and shadow to thrive. In the East Garden Pavilion, where it had all nearly ended before it could begin, the first balance bloom had multiplied into dozens, their luminous petals shifting between colors in perfect harmony. Like the two people who tended them, they had found a way to exist in two worlds at once, stronger for the seeming contradictions that defined them. "Did you ever finish that story?" Dane asked one evening as they sat among the blooms. "The one about the dragon who fell in love with a human?" Leora smiled, her hand finding his with practiced ease. "I'm writing a new ending now." Signals in the static. The next morning dawned with a peculiar stillness that seemed to hang over Nova Haven like a held breath. Ilara arrived at the radio station earlier than intended, drawn by a restlessness she couldn't explain. Pixel trotted. Beside her, his earlier reluctance replaced by cautious curiosity. She had brought tools, a portable light array, a multi-scanner borrowed from her friend Dez, who worked maintenance at the city's power grid, and a small digital recorder to capture any unusual acoustic phenomena. As a composer, she'd developed an ear for patterns in sound that others might miss. "Let's be methodical about this," she told Pixel, who watched her with intelligent eyes. "Start with what we can see, then move to what we can't." The main broadcast room looked different in daylight. Thin beams of morning sun penetrated the dusty windows, illuminating floating particles that danced in the light. The equipment that had seemed merely obsolete yesterday now struck her as oddly advanced, not just old but different, as if designed according to principles that had never quite caught on. When Ilara activated her scanner, it immediately registered anomalies. Power signatures where no power should exist, temperature variations that formed perfect circles on the floor, and most intriguing of all, faint electromagnetic readings pulsing in a rhythm almost like a heartbeat. "Something's active beneath us," she murmured, following the strongest signal to a section of flooring that looked identical to the rest. When she pressed her ear against it, she heard a faint hum, musical in its consistency. It took her nearly an hour to find the release mechanism, a sequence of pressure points on the control console that had to be activated in a specific order. When she finally hit the right combination, a section of the floor slid open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. Pixel whined softly, but followed as Ilara made her way down, the light array casting dramatic shadows that stretched and contracted with each step. The staircase ended in a cavernous chamber that should have extended well beyond the station's foundations and into the bedrock beneath Nova Haven itself. The space was dominated by what could only be described as a broadcasting array, but unlike any Ilara had ever seen. Instead of traditional transmitters, the technology consisted of crystalline structures arranged in concentric circles, each glowing with a soft blue luminescence. At the center stood a chair facing what appeared to be a control interface. "What is this place?" Ilara whispered, her voice swallowed by the perfect acoustics of the chamber. "That's exactly what I'd like to know," came a voice from behind her. Ilara spun around, nearly dropping her light array. A man stood at the foot of the stairs, tall, with features that suggested East Asian ancestry, his dark hair pulled back in a short ponytail. He wore the utilitarian jumpsuit of Nova Haven's Communications Authority, a scanner similar to hers in his hand. "Who are you?" Ilara demanded, instinctively placing herself between the stranger and the central interface. "This property is private." The man held up his hands in a placating gesture. "Taro Nakamura, communications engineer. We detected unusual signal patterns emanating from this location. Patterns that shouldn't be possible with any registered technology." His eyes moved past her to the crystalline array. "Now I see why. I'm Ilara Voss. I bought this place yesterday." She relaxed slightly but remained wary. "From a woman named Nyx Calloway." Something flickered across Taro's face. Recognition, perhaps even concern. "The Calloways have owned this property for generations. They've sold it 7 times in the past 80 years, according to records." Each time, they buy it back within months when the new owners abandon it. Why would they abandon it? Taro gestured to the chamber around them. Maybe because of this, whatever this is. He approached one of the crystal structures, careful not to touch it. These aren't standard transmitters, they're frequency amplifiers, but they're operating on principles I've never seen documented. Alara felt a strange connection to this man, not just physical attraction, though that was certainly present. It was the way he looked at the technology with the same mixture of wonder and analytical focus that she applied to complex musical compositions. "Listen," she said suddenly, holding up a hand. "Do you hear that?" The crystals had begun to emit, a tone barely perceptible at first, then gradually increasing in clarity. It was a chord progression unlike anything in standard music theory, notes that seemed to exist between established tones on the scale. Taro's scanner began to flash warnings. "Whatever this is, it's responding to our presence. The energy readings are spiking." He moved closer to Alara, protective rather than threatening. "Maybe we should go back up until we understand what we're dealing with." As if in response, the central interface activated. Holographic displays shimmered into existence, showing what appeared to be waveforms, sound patterns intertwined with mathematical formulas that shifted and evolved like living things. One display stabilized, showing a sequence of coordinates that Alara recognized from the hidden room upstairs. But now, alongside them, appeared a date. 15 years ago, the last time the station had been operational before Nix's family reclaimed it. "It's some kind of log," Taro said, studying the display. "Recording transmission attempts." He pointed to another set of numbers. "That's today's date. It's still active, still trying to complete whatever function it was designed for." Alara approached the central chair, drawn by an intuition she couldn't explain. When she sat, the interface reconfigured itself, becoming something like a musical keyboard combined with a mixing console. This was familiar territory for her, the arrangement of controls mirroring composition software she'd used. "I think I'm supposed to play this," she said softly. "Wait!" Taro began, but it was too late. Alara's fingers found the controls, guided by the same instinct that had allowed her to compose music since childhood. The crystals responded immediately, their tones shifting to match her input, creating harmonies that seemed to bend the air itself. The central display transformed, showing what looked like a tunnel of light extending into infinity. And from somewhere within that tunnel came a voice, or rather the suggestion of a voice, words formed not from sound, but from the spaces between sounds. "Contact established, parameter, match found, initializing connection sequence." Taro moved to Alara's side, his hand coming to rest on her shoulder. The touch sent an electric current through her that had nothing to do with the technology surrounding them. Their eyes met briefly, mutual recognition of the danger and wonder they'd stumbled into together. The voice from the tunnel continued, more distinct now. 15 cycles since last contact. Protocol requires authentication. Please provide harmonization sequence." "It wants us to respond," Alara whispered. "It's waiting for a specific pattern." "Don't," Taro said, his grip on her shoulder tightening slightly. "We don't know what we're dealing with. This technology, it's beyond anything in our current scientific understanding." But Alara could feel the pattern forming in her mind, notes assembling themselves into a progression that felt right, felt necessary. Her fingers hovered over the controls. "Trust me," she said, looking up at Taro. "I've spent my life translating emotions into sound. Whatever this is, it's speaking a language I understand." Their eyes held for a long moment. Then Taro nodded, his expression shifting from concern to a tentative trust that touched Alara more deeply than she expected. She turned back to the interface and began to play, translating the melody from her dream into the strange controls before her. The crystal array responded, each element lighting up in sequence, building toward something that felt both climactic and inevitable. The tunnel on the display began to contract, focusing down to a single point of brilliant light. The voice returned, clearer than before. Connection established. "Welcome back, observer." Pixel, who had been watching silently from the stairs, suddenly howled. A sound of warning or welcome, Ilara couldn't tell which. The light from the display expanded, washing over them in a wave that carried with it the distinct sensation of being seen by something vast and distant. And in that moment, as the light encompassed them, Ilara felt Taro's hand find hers, their fingers intertwining in an instinctive gesture of human connection in the face of the unknown. The simple warmth of his palm against hers anchored her, as reality itself seemed to flicker and reshape around them. The station wasn't just receiving signals, it was opening a door. The voice between worlds. The light faded, leaving Ilara and Taro in a silence so profound it seemed to have physical weight. Their hands remained clasped, neither willing to break the connection that had anchored them through whatever had just happened. Pixel crouched low to the ground, his fur raised along his spine, eyes fixed on the now darkened display. "Are you okay?" Taro asked, his voice hushed. Ilara nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure. Her mind felt different. Expanded somehow, as if certain neural pathways had been rerouted or awakened. Musical phrases flickered through her consciousness, complex harmonies she'd never conceived before, but now seemed obvious, necessary. "Something's changed," she whispered. "I can feel it." The crystalline array had dimmed but not deactivated. A subtle pulse ran through the structures at regular intervals, reminiscent of respiration. The central display remained dark, but the interface beneath Ilara's fingertips had grown warm. "Almost alive to the touch." "Whatever you did," Taro said, finally releasing her hand to check his scanner. "It's altered the energy signature of this entire building." He showed her the readings, which displayed patterns that fluctuated in time with the crystal pulses. "It's as if the station itself is breathing." Ilara rose from the chair on unsteady legs. "We need to understand what this place really is, and who Nix Calloway is." They ascended the spiral staircase in thoughtful silence, each processing what they'd witnessed. Back in the main broadcasting room, Ilara noticed subtle changes. Dials that had been coated in dust now gleamed as if recently cleaned. Lights flickered on equipment that had seemed dead just hours before. "The entire station is reactivating," Taro murmured, running his hand along a console. "Like it was in some kind of dormant state, waiting for the right input." Ilara moved to a row of filing cabinets she'd dismissed earlier as likely empty or filled with mundane records. Now, driven by new intuition, she pulled open the third drawer and found a leather-bound journal. The name inside read, "Cassandra Calloway, 2097. "This is from nearly 40 years ago," she said, carefully turning the brittle pages. "Listen to this. Third contact established today. The entity's communications remain fragmented, but I'm beginning to understand. It exists in what it calls the frequency between, a dimension that overlaps with ours, but vibrates at a different resonance. Our music, our harmonies, are what drew it to us. It hears us singing across the void." Taro had moved to stand behind her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "An interdimensional communication device disguised as a radio station," he said, his breath tickling her ear. "Hiding in plain sight." Ilara continued reading, flipping through pages of increasingly frantic notes. "The connection strengthens with each contact. Today, for the first time, I could see through to its world, a place of living sound, where thought and music are the same thing. It wants to share this gift, but I fear what such knowledge might do to human minds not prepared to receive it." She turned to the final entry, dated 15 years ago. "Nix doesn't understand the danger. She wants to continue the work, to strengthen the connection until full transfer is possible. She doesn't see that it's already coming through, already changing this place, changing us. I've sabotaged the primary array. The connection will hold, but remain dormant until someone with the right harmonic sensitivity reactivates it. I pray that day never comes, but I know my daughter too well. She will find a way to continue with or without this station." Ilara closed the journal, a chill running through her. Nix didn't sell me this place to be rid of it. She sold it to me because she knew I was a musician. She's been watching me, waiting for someone with harmonic sensitivity to take the bait. And now you've reactivated what her mother tried to shut down, Taro said, his expression troubled. The question is, what happens next? As if in answer, the main broadcasting equipment hummed to life. The central microphone, an antique design that should have been purely decorative, began to emit a soft static that gradually resolved into a voice unlike any human sound. It spoke in tonal shifts and melodic patterns that shouldn't have been comprehensible, yet somehow translated directly into meaning in Ilara's mind. Observer. Connector. The pathway reopens after long silence. We have waited. Ilara approached the microphone, drawn by an intuitive certainty that she needed to respond. Who are you? She asked. We are those who dwell in the spaces between your notes. We exist in the harmonics you cannot sustain. We have heard your world singing since your first instruments vibrated the air. Taro moved to Ilara's side, his hand finding the small of her back in a gesture that felt both protective and supportive. The simple contact sent warmth spreading through her body, a reminder of human connection amidst this otherworldly encounter. What do you want from us? Taro asked. To share, to merge, to bring the music of our realm into yours, and yours into ours. The Calloway line has heard our call for generations. Some feared. Some embraced. The last observer attempted to close the doorway. But doorways once opened leave impressions in reality. Ilara felt a strange doubling in her perception, as if she could simultaneously sense this room and another space overlaid upon it. A place where sound had form and music had substance. Are you trying to come through to our world? We are already here in fragments. Each contact allows more transference. The one you know as Nix Calloway carries our harmonies within her biological structure now. She seeks to complete what her ancestors began. And what exactly is that? Taro's voice had hardened, his engineering mind clearly cataloging potential threats. Full harmonization. The joining of realms. Your dimension vibrates at a frequency that creates matter as you understand it. Ours vibrates to create what you might call pure consciousness. The Calloways discovered that these frequencies can be brought into alignment. With what result? Ilara pressed. Evolution, transformation, the next movement in the universal symphony. The microphone fell silent. The equipment powered down as suddenly as it had activated, leaving them in a quiet broken only by their breathing and Pixel's occasional nervous whine. Ilara turned to Taro, finding his face much closer than she'd realized. Something had shifted between them, a connection forged through shared experience of the impossible. His dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made her heart accelerate, his hand still resting against her back. We should leave, he said, though his body made no move to create distance. Report this to the authorities, quarantine the site. And tell them what? Ilara countered. That we've made contact with beings from another dimension who speak in music? They'd think we were hallucinating. She shook her head. Besides, I don't think we can walk away now. Whatever's happening here, we're part of it. We barely understand what we're dealing with, Taro argued, but without conviction. She could see the same fascination in his eyes that she felt herself, the scientist's irresistible pull toward the unknown. Then we learn, she said simply. Together. The word hung between them, laden with meaning beyond their current predicament. Taro's hand moved from her back to her face, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone in a touch so gentle it made her breath catch. I should be reporting this, he murmured, not standing here thinking about how much I want to kiss you. Ilara's lips curved into a smile. Maybe both impulses come from the same place. The desire to connect, to understand something new. When his mouth met hers, the contact seemed to resonate through her entire being, as if the frequency of her existence had suddenly aligned with his. The kiss deepened, his arms encircling her waist as hers wrapped around his neck, their bodies finding a harmony as natural as any musical progression. In the periphery of her awareness, Ilara noticed the crystal array below pulsing brighter, responding to the emotional energy generated between them. She sensed rather than saw the faint shimmer in the air around them, the boundary between dimensions growing just slightly thinner. Part of her knew they should be concerned about this reaction, should step back and analyze what was happening. But a stronger part recognized that this connection with Taro was a lifeline, something real and human to hold on to as reality itself became increasingly fluid around them. When they finally separated, breathless and flushed, the station seemed quieter than before, as if holding its breath in anticipation. "We need to find Nyx," Taro said, his hands still resting on Ilara's hips. "She knows more than she told you." Ilara nodded, reluctantly stepping back from his embrace. "And we need to understand exactly what full harmonization means before it happens. Something tells me Cassandra Calloway sabotaged this place for good reason." As they gathered their equipment to leave, Ilara felt a new presence in her mind, not invasive, but observant. Whatever entity existed in the frequency between worlds was now aware of her, aware of them. It was listening, watching, waiting for the next notes in a composition that had been building for generations. And somewhere across Nova Haven, Nyx Calloway surely knew that the station had awakened once more. The real question was what she planned to do about it, and whether Ilara and Taro would be ready when she made her move. Breaking through rain fell in sheets across Nova Haven, turning the streets into rivers of reflected neon. Ilara and Taro huddled under the inadequate shelter of a cafe awning, watching pedestrians hurry past with their collars turned up against the downpour. They had spent 2 days searching for Nyx Calloway without success, her registered address abandoned, her business contacts claiming ignorance of her whereabouts. "She's gone underground," Taro said, passing Ilara a cup of steaming tea. "Either hiding from us or preparing for whatever comes next." Ilara nodded, her gaze distant. Since activating the station, her perception had been different. Music everywhere, in the rhythm of the rainfall, the hum of passing vehicles, even the cadence of conversations around them. Not hallucinations, but a heightened awareness of the patterns underlying ordinary sounds. "I dreamed about the entity again last night," she admitted. "It showed me its world, a place where thought and sound are the same thing, where music creates reality instead of just describing it." She cupped her hands around the warm container. "It was beautiful, Taro, terrifying but beautiful." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. The simple contact grounded her, as it had increasingly over the past days. Whatever connection had sparked between them in the station had only deepened, evolving into something that felt both urgent and inevitable. "We need to understand what happens if this harmonization proceeds," he said. "And we need to decide if we should try to stop it." A flicker of movement caught Ilara's attention. Pixel, who had been investigating nearby puddles, suddenly froze, his attention fixed on something across the street. Following his gaze, she spotted a familiar figure watching them from a shadowed doorway. "There," she whispered, tilting her head slightly. "Don't look directly. It's Nyx." Taro casually shifted position, angling his body to catch the reflection in the cafe window. "Are you sure?" Before Ilara could answer, Nyx emerged from the shadows and approached, seemingly unconcerned about being recognized. She moved with odd grace through the downpour, the rain appearing to bend around her rather than fall upon her. "You've awakened it," she said without preamble, stopping before them. Her voice carried the same strange harmonic quality Ilara had heard in the station, overtones and undertones creating complex chords with each word. After 15 years of silence, the doorway opens again. Taro stepped slightly forward, positioning himself between Nyx and Ilara. "You knew exactly what would happen when you sold the station to a musician." A smile touched Nyx's lips, not malevolent, but not entirely human either. "I recognized a compatible frequency, just as my ancestors did when they built the station 90 years ago, disguising interdimensional technology as a simple radio transmitter. Your mother tried to shut it down," Ilara said. "She sabotaged the system because she was afraid of what might come through." "My mother lacked vision," Nyx replied, her gaze drifting to the sky where lightning fractured the clouds. "She heard the music but feared the transformation it heralded. And what transformation is that exactly?" Taro's voice hardened. Your family has been experimenting with forces you barely understand for generations. On the contrary, Nix countered, we understand perfectly. The beings in the frequency between aren't invaders or conquerors. They're teachers, offering an evolution of consciousness through harmonic resonance. She focused on Alara. You've felt it already, haven't you? The changes in your perception? The way music has become more than just sound? Alara couldn't deny it. That doesn't explain why you sold the station after your family protected it for so long. Something like regret flickered across Nix's features. The Territorial Oversight Committee began investigating unusual energy signatures in the area. They would have discovered the station eventually, condemned it, dismantled everything. I needed someone who could reactivate the connection before that happened. Someone with the right harmonic sensitivity. Her expression softened. Someone like you, Alara. So you've been watching me, Alara said, a chill running through her despite the warm tea in her hands. For months, Nix admitted without apology. After I heard your composition Nebula in E minor, your understanding of harmonic theory is compatible with the frequency between. You hear the spaces where others hear only notes. Taro's hand tightened around Alara's. And now that she's reactivated your family's interdimensional phone line, what happens next? What's this harmonization process your ancestors were working toward? Nix glanced at their joined hands, a knowing expression crossing her face. Interesting. The resonance is affecting both of you, creating a harmonic bond. That's rare. She looked back at the sky where the storm was intensifying. What happens next is acceleration. The barrier between dimensions thins with each passing hour. Soon, the frequency of our world and theirs will synchronize, allowing direct transfer of consciousness between realms. And the consequences? Alara pressed. Evolution, Nix said simply. Human consciousness expanded beyond current limitations. Communication through pure thought music. The next stage of development, as natural as the transition from single-cell organisms to complex life. Natural, Taro repeated skeptically. Except it's being artificially induced through technology your family built. We didn't build it, Nix corrected. We discovered it. The technology was already there, embedded in the bedrock beneath Nova Haven. My great-grandmother simply learned how to activate it, how to disguise it as something that wouldn't attract attention. A deafening crack of thunder punctuated her words. The storm was directly overhead now, lightning illuminating Nix's face in stark flashes that revealed subtle changes in her features, a luminous quality to her eyes, a faint shimmer beneath her skin as if something radiant struggled to emerge. You're changing, Alara observed. The harmonization is already happening to you, Nix nodded. I've been exposed longer than most. The transformation accelerates with proximity to the station and emotional intensity. Her gaze flicked between Alara and Taro. Your connection is feeding the process. The entities are drawn to strong emotional resonance. It creates bridges between dimensions. Pixel growled low in his throat, pressing against Alara's legs. She reached down to calm him, but the fox remained tense, his enhanced senses clearly detecting something beyond human perception. We need to see your research, Taro said. All of it. The complete history of your family's interaction with these entities. There's no time for that, Nix replied, urgency entering her voice. The harmonization reaches critical threshold in less than 12 hours. That's why I sought you out. Critical threshold for what? Alara demanded. Complete synchronization. The moment when the station will fully activate, broadcasting the harmonic frequency across Nova Haven. Nix's expression turned pleading. I need you both at the station when it happens. Your compatible frequencies will help stabilize the transition. Taro's expression darkened. You're talking about affecting an entire city without consent. Potentially changing people on a fundamental level. Evolution rarely asks permission, Nix countered. Did the first fish that crawled onto land take a vote? Did the first mammals consult with the dinosaurs before replacing them? Those changes happened over millions of years, Alara said. You're talking about something that will happen overnight. Because it must, Nix insisted. The window of opportunity is narrow. The dimensional alignment that makes this possible occurs once every 60 years. If we miss this chance, the frequency between will be inaccessible until the next alignment. Rain suddenly intensified, hammering against the awning with such force that conversation became difficult. Nix glanced up, a knowing expression crossing her face. The weather isn't coincidental. Atmospheric conditions respond to dimensional thinning. It will only get worse as we approach the threshold. She reached into her pocket and withdrew a small crystal similar to those in the array beneath the station. If you want answers, come to this address in 3 hours. My family's complete records are there. See the evidence, then decide. She pressed the crystal into Alara's palm, where it pulsed with gentle luminescence. But understand this, the process has already begun. With or without your help, the harmonization is coming. Before they could respond, Nix turned and walked away, the crowd of rain-soaked pedestrians seeming to part unconsciously before her. Within moments, she had disappeared into the downpour. Alara stared at the crystal in her hand, feeling its subtle vibration against her skin. "She's telling the truth about one thing," she said quietly. "Something is definitely happening. I can feel it in the air, in the sounds around us." Taro pulled her close, his embrace protective and intimate simultaneously. "Whatever's coming, we face it together," he murmured against her hair. "But I don't trust her. This harmonization could be wonderful, or it could be catastrophic." Ilara leaned into him, drawing strength from his solid presence. "We need to see those records, make our own decision." She looked up at him, searching his eyes. "But if the station really is accelerating toward some kind of dimensional breakthrough, then we need to be there," he finished, "to understand it and, if necessary, to stop it." Harmonix, the Calloway family archive, occupied the basement of a pre-colonial building on Nova Haven's eastern perimeter. Shelves lined the walls filled with journals, data crystals, and artifacts spanning 90 years of interdimensional research. As Alara and Taro pored over the records, the storm outside intensified, wind howling against the ancient windows like a living thing seeking entrance. "Listen to this," Taro said, looking up from a journal dated 2057. Elise Calloway wrote, "The entities exist in a state of pure harmonic consciousness. Their entire civilization is built on modulating the fundamental frequency of their dimension. They perceive our world as discordant noise, except for our music. Through music, we accidentally created a bridge." Alara nodded, scrolling through files on an ancient datapad. "And this report from 2089 details the first physical manifestation, a crystalline structure that appeared in the station during a transmission. The material couldn't be analyzed because it partially existed in another dimensional state. The same material used in the broadcast array," Taro confirmed. They had been studying for hours, piecing together the history of the Calloway family's contact with the frequency between. The pattern was clear. Each generation had pushed the connection further, with some embracing the changes and others resisting, leading to a cycle of activation and sabotage that had played out repeatedly over decades. "The harmonization has been attempted 3 times before," Ilara said, closing the datapad. "In 2102, 2162, and 2224, each time it failed because the frequency alignment wasn't perfect." She met Taro's eyes. Cassandra Calloway, Nix's mother, believed the side effects were too dangerous to continue. The people closest to the station experienced accelerated changes, becoming something neither fully human nor fully whatever exists in the frequency between. "And what happened to them?" Taro asked, though his expression suggested he already suspected the answer. "They couldn't maintain physical cohesion in our dimension. The records describe it as harmonically ascending to the frequency between." Ilara's voice softened. "They effectively ceased to exist in our reality." The implication hung in the air between them. If the harmonization proceeded, those most affected, possibly including themselves, might be permanently altered, transformed into beings that could no longer exist in the physical world. And yet, Taro said, flipping through another journal, "there are accounts here of incredible advancements, telepathic communication, accelerated healing, expanded consciousness, abilities that appeared during partial harmonization, but vanished when the connection weakened." Ilara rose and paced the small room, Pixel following anxiously at her heels. "So we're looking at a potentially transformative leap in human evolution." but with the risk that those most affected might lose their physical existence entirely. She ran her fingers through her hair in frustration. And we have, 4 hours left to decide if that's a risk worth taking for an entire city? Taro set aside the journals and crossed to her, taking her hands in his. I think we need to focus on a more immediate question. Can we even stop this process now that it's begun? Before Ilara could answer, the crystal Nyx had given them pulsed with sudden brightness, projecting a holographic message into the air between them. Nyx's face appeared, her features now unmistakably altered, her skin translucent, her eyes luminous with internal light. The threshold approaches faster than anticipated. Her voice resonated with harmonic overtones. The station requires stabilization. Without compatible frequencies present, the harmonization will become chaotic, destruction rather than transformation. Her expression conveyed genuine concern. You've seen the records now. You understand the potential. Choose quickly. The message ended, the crystal dimming to its previous soft glow. Ilara and Taro exchanged looks, a silent communication passing between them that felt deeper than words. In the days since they'd first entered the station together, their connection had developed a quality that bordered on telepathic, emotions and impressions flowing between them with increasing clarity. We have to go, Ilara said finally. Even if we decide to try to stop this, we need to be at the station to do it. Taro nodded, his expression resolute. Together. The journey to the station was harrowing. The storm had escalated beyond natural parameters, lightning striking in patterns that formed geometric shapes across the sky. Wind tore at buildings, transportation systems had shut down, and the few people still on the streets moved with disoriented urgency, as if hearing sounds beyond normal perception. When they arrived, the station was transformed. The rusted exterior now pulsed with rippling waves of energy that distorted the air around it. The broadcast tower had become a column of shifting light that extended into the storm clouds above, where it spread outward in a dome of translucent energy covering the entire city. Inside, they found Nyx in the main broadcast room, her body partially translucent, harmonic patterns visible beneath her skin like luminous circuitry. She turned as they entered, relief evident in her expression. "You came," she said, her voice creating visible waves in the air. The process accelerated beyond predictions. The dimensional membrane is already thinning to critical levels. Taro moved cautiously through the room, his scanner recording readings that made him frown. These energy patterns are exponentially increasing. If they continue at this rate, the station itself might not maintain structural integrity, Nyx finished. That's why I need you both. Your compatible frequencies can help stabilize the harmonization. Ilara felt the music of the process all around them. A complex symphony building toward crescendo, beautiful but dangerously intense. And if we refuse? If we try to shut it down instead? Nyx gestured to the equipment which now appeared more crystalline than mechanical. The original controls no longer function. We're beyond the point of deactivation. Her expression softened. But you could help shape what comes next. The entities respond to emotional resonance, to connection between consciousnesses. Your bond could guide the harmonization toward integration rather than chaotic transformation. As if to emphasize her point, the building shuddered. Ceiling panels cracked, revealing glimpses of another space overlaid upon their reality, a dimension of living sound where structures formed from harmonic patterns rather than physical matter. Pixel growled, his enhanced genetics allowing him to perceive the thinning barriers between worlds. He pressed against Ilara's legs, torn between protection and fear. Ilara and Taro shared another look, that wordless communication flowing between them. They had spent hours studying the Callaway records, weighing potential futures against known risks. Now, with reality literally fracturing around them, the time for deliberation had passed.